Well, thank you all. I know that for graduation, sometimes it seems extremely easy to do. Sometimes it seems extremely hard. This last few years, everything's been extremely hard. So let's just get right into it. Okay, for cohort graduation rate and stuff like that, there's on the Infinite Campus graduation tab. There's some very important pieces of data. The first one is the diploma date, and that really is the date that the students was their last instructional date, so that you can go ahead and put that in so that they can receive your credit for them. The next is the diploma type, and diploma type it's a drop down menu, and it will there'll be different values there. One will be regular graduate, one will be alternative diploma graduates, one will be the other ones. There's multiple different ones. The next important date is really one of the most important dates, other than the diploma type and date, is the date first entered ninth grade. So you will enter that information, and that is the first date that the student started ninth grade, no matter where it was. If they started in Texas, then you need to put in ninth grade, you need to put that date in. And what that date will do is that date will calculate what their cohort is. So it will be 4 years after they start ninth grade that they're expected to be completed for the 4-year graduation rate. For the 5-year graduation rate, are expected to have either graduated in 4 years or graduate in that 5th year, so that you can make sure that you get credit for them. Otherwise, they will count to the negative. So for cohort graduation rate, there's some important dates, and I forgot to put one on here. If the student is a regular graduate during the regular school year, you need to have their G codes entered by June 30th, so that they can be tracked and monitored and make sure that everybody's got theirs in. If the student is going to summer school, then they need to have their G code entered by July 31st. That last instructional day needs to be by July 31st. That way, they can be counted in the prior school year's graduation rate, which is probably the graduation rate they need to be in. If they graduate, or if they complete their schooling after July 31st, then you still need to put in the last instructional date that they put in, but that student will count to the next year's as being graduated in the next year. Now, some of these sometimes get confused with dropout rate, because dropout rate and graduation rate both deal with the end status of the student. And for the graduation rate, it's most important is to get their G codes in. If you're dealing with dropout rate, you want to make sure that you have those entered by October 1st. Otherwise, they're going to count as a dropout. If they don't have those done by October 1st, then they will count as a dropout, unless they're in one of the following state codes is their end status. If they're a W-20, which means they've moved to homeschool. If they're a W-21, which means they've moved to private school. Or if they're a W-22. Now, W-22 sometimes is a tricky one, because if the student doesn't actually enroll into that next school in Kentucky, then they will get counted as a dropout. So if you get a records request, and you put in a W-22, and then they don't actually enroll in the Infinite Campus in the other school district, then you're still going to get counted as a dropout. And there is a report in Infinite Campus where you can see those W-22s that don't have a following enrollment. Also, if a student is withdrawn due to medical conditions, W-07, they will not get counted as a dropout. And if a student is deceased, obviously, they're not going to get counted as a dropout. Or if the student graduated in either a G1 through G4 category, then they will be not counted as a dropout. The other important piece of data that's not as much important for Office of Assessment and Accountability for the cohort graduation rate, but is important for your transition, your career and technical folks. They need to know the diploma period, and that diploma period should be either mid-year graduate, which means they graduate prior to July 15th of the current school year, or spring graduate, which means they graduate by January or after, I'm sorry, the graduation date of January 15th through the end of the current school year. So, as I said, my role in this one is to get us back onto track and to get you to lunch either early or on time. So I can go ahead and take questions, Dee Dee, if there's any questions now.
Okay, right now we do not have any questions, but if you do have questions, please put them in app.gosoapbox.com, and the KDE data is the code to get in. So you were very quick.
Yes, I will just one reminder of the 3 dates that are important. June 30th, that is the date that if you have a regular spring graduate, they need to have their G codes in Infinite Campus by June 30th. If you have a student that goes to summer school, those G codes need to be in by July 31st. And if they're not in by July 31st, then they will count to the positive the next year, but they will count against you in the existing year.
I'll add to that, David, that for transcript purposes, you actually need to have your G code and your graduation date. Please don't release transcripts or final transcripts of seniors until both of those are in the system, because the colleges won't take them as a final transcript unless the G code is there showing that they graduated and there's a date of graduation. The second thing around transcripts on this is if they final transcripts need to be distributed by the end of July, and that's going to be tough at the for those summer school graduates for them to be free. So Parchment's contract that KDE has, and it's a partnership with KDE, CPE, and KIA, pay for transcripts, but only for the students that graduate through the July 31st each year. After that, they're considered a alumni, and they have to pay the $3 and something per transcript. So I think I killed enough time that I do have a question now. So on David Curd's first slide, so you might want to go back. It says the diploma date should be the last instructional day. If a student graduates in 2021 and comes back for a supplemental year in 21-22 because of Senate Bill 128, will the graduate date be in 21-22 or 20? The graduation date, I'll take this one. The graduation date will definitely be a 2021 graduate. Because if they graduate, if they've met all the requirements, then they should be graduated in 21. If they come back in 21-22 school year, the GPA and the graduation date won't change on the transcript. And there will be guidance that'll come out on how you're going to make this happen on the transcripts. But they can show additional courses and grades that they accrued in the supplemental year, but that can't impact or can't affect in any way the GPA or the graduation date. Tricky. Another question. Are we talking about graduation codes yet for those kids who have graduated but want to do a do-over year in 21-22? Or is that a future webinar? I think that question I just answered really spoke to that. If they've met, I mean, the guidance the superintendent's got, and there was a webcast yesterday for superintendents, and the guidance that's gone out, I've already put it out there as a link, and we'll add it to these too. It says that if they've met all the requirements to graduate in 2021 this year, then they should go ahead and be graduate, because that's the way the statutory requirements are. If they do decide to come back, even though they have completed all the requirements successfully and have graduated, then that additional time in school will not count for GPA or graduation date. It won't impact that at all. Hopefully that's clear. But we found there's a couple ways that we're going to be able to do this, and Kim Walters has been playing around with this and staging on changing, depending on how many of these type of students you have, whether you go in and change the transcript just because there's just one or two of these, so that this doesn't change the weight on the transcript, so it doesn't impact grad, or if you're going to have to set up courses a little bit differently for these students that come back. So we've got at least two options right now. We'll get that information out. We're really kind of waiting to see how many districts even offer this and how many seniors really or graduates decide to come back.